Hi there, it's Toby Jones here and welcome to today's video. Today is a box set showcase of a box set from one of my favourite heavy metal bands, Judas Priest, and that is this big mammoth, albeit on the camera doesn't look like it in terms of size, but it is a great box set, Judas Priest, the complete albums collection. But before we get into displaying the box set itself, I think it'd be good to talk about how I got into Judas Priest, because with a lot of these bands, a lot of these artists, I think certainly I struggle to think of when and how and what the occasion was of getting into these groups. I think that all of a sudden you get into these groups and you've listened to a couple of songs, a couple of albums, depending on how deep you are, and you sometimes forget the roots to that. Well, most of you will know and gather quite quickly that I'm 22 years of age, so not the target market, and obviously not around at the time where Judas Priest hit their height in the 70s and 80s. So how did I get into Judas Priest? I guess like a lot of people my age, my music interests were from my, I'm going to call him an ancestor, which seems really rude. My old man is responsible for a lot of my music taste, a lot of the early bands I got into. So the earliest bands I probably got into were Kiss, AC/DC, Thin Lizzy, and Judas Priest were one of those, not late bloomers, but certainly later bloomers, probably with Motorhead as well, as my interest got a little bit heavier. So what was my first interaction with Judas Priest? Well, probably British Steel, if I remember. Probably 5 or 6 years ago. I've had an iPod all my life. Love my iPod Classic. I know a lot of people use Spotify, which I do use Spotify to stream music, but when I'm out and about, my iPod is my go-to to use my iPod on my iPod Classic. And my dad had a big collection of music in terms of what was on his iTunes, and Judas Priest one of those groups. And I think that I was guilty of using the shuffle button, and I guess from just a couple of items in pop culture really. I knew Breaking the Law and Living After Midnight. They were the two big tracks I knew from British Steel. And just after generally knowing of Judas Priest, I knew a couple of their tracks. Exciter from Stained Class, from Killing Machines Delivering the Goods, the title track in the US I should say, Hellbent for Leather, Rock Forever, a couple of those songs, and then Sinner from Sin After Sin, Victim of Changes and The Ripper were tracks that my dad played a lot when I was young, if I remember right. So those were two that I knew as well, and I think you've got another thing coming. But it wasn't really until the COVID lockdown that I really got myself immersed in Judas Priest. And again, I don't know why I did this, but I think some of it was down to, and a lot of my music interest now can be thanked to my sister, who suggested for Father's Day, what would it have been now, 4 years ago, that we go and buy my dad a record player. And before all that, I'd got plenty of money in the bank and hadn't bought all these records and CDs. But that's another story for another day. And my dad had down his shed some of his old records. Unfortunately, a lot of the records had been misplaced from time, and we spent a lot of money rebuilding that collection. But some of those records that were still there were Judas Priest, Sad Wings of Destiny, Stained Class, Killing Machine, British Steel, and I think Unleashed in the East, the Live in Japan album. And during lockdown, I just listened to some of these albums and was blown away, really, particularly by Stained Class, which I have to say remains my favourite Judas Priest album to now. So I think we kind of got there at the 2020 period, and my interest had kind of gone from Sad Wings of Destiny, which is Judas Priest's second album, to British Steel, released in 1980. And I've done another video previous to this of why I've changed my habits from vinyl to CD. And I think from memory, I don't think any of the other Judas Priest albums were bought on vinyl post What We Found in the Shed, apart from Sin After Sin, which I think is also a brilliant album. So how did I come around to buy this? Well, again, about 12-18 months ago, I started really getting interested in CDs again. And I saw a couple of kind of complete album collections bargain hunting on eBay, and this one was just, well, a complete bargain. So what you get in the complete albums collection, and it's a bit of a taboo subject because it's not the complete albums. Now, there's two reasons for this. One is time. You can't put something in a collection that succeeds its release. So this was released in 2011, so Redeemer of Souls and Firepower aren't in this compilation. There's also the taboo subject, of course, of Rob Halford being out of the band for a while, so the two Ripper Owens albums, Demolition and Jugulator, aren't in this box set. Not that I'm particularly bothered. to be blunt, because when I went through and listened to the albums in this box set, after I listened to Painkiller, I have got Jugulator and Demolition on my iPod, and I got through Jugulator just about. Nothing really memorable. Let's say I didn't even get through Demolition, because it was just painful to listen to. But we don't want to talk about negativity too much in this. So, this was just an excellent box set. It had got everything I wanted for an absolutely fantastic price. Now, if you look at the back of this, I don't know if I can get it in shot with it being a CD box set, obviously, if those of you guys aren't aware. But I think it's fairly obvious by now. My hand would be struggling a lot more if there was 17 vinyl albums in here. But it's got 17 albums, all the way from Rocka Rolla to the Touch of Evil live album in 2009, which is a good album in fairness. So, 3 live albums in here, Unleashed in the East, the 70s era album, Priest live from the 80s, and then a Touch of Evil from 2009. So, this was released in 2011. The first, as I understand, again, play on words really, complete albums collection, but most of the stuff is in there. So this was released in 2011. Before that, we had the Judas Priest remasters, which I found that quite comical. I'm sure I read, and I could be wrong on this, so correct me if I am wrong, that basically there was a box similar to this, but a little bit larger in stature, that would hold all of the remastered albums, and the original box came with Sin After Sin, Stained Class, Killing Machine, Unleashed in the East, and then bragging on the box that there was space for the other 8 albums. I'm not sure how I'd quite receive that myself. I'd rather just buy the full product. But there you go. So that was the only real complete box set before this. But as I've just hinted, there's only, I think, if I just check my notes, 12 albums. So it went from Sin After Sin, so no Sad Wings of Destiny, all the way to Painkiller. And I can only presume maybe that was because of the situation that obviously Priest were on the Gull label for Rocka Rolla and Sad Wings of Destiny. Not too sure of what happened there, but again, it's got everything up to Painkiller, and as I've just said, because it was only released in 2001, no inclusion of Angel of Retribution and Nostradamus, which are in this box set. So, last thing before I open the box set, which is also the geeky part of collecting for me, because there's always 2 parts. The first and most important part is the music itself, of course, and then the second is getting a bargain. I love getting things for a good price, it's just great. And this cost me on an eBay auction, again, let's just check my notes, £53, plus £3 in post, so £56 in total. Now, I bought this time last year. It was April last year, so I've had it a long time. And just think about that for a minute. £56 for a box set such as this, 17 albums, just over £3 an album. You're not going to get that anywhere else, are you? If you go and buy the individual CDs, you're probably looking at £5 each, let's be fair. Times that by 17, 10... My maths is usually better than this. That's £90? 85. So it's £30 more than this. The one thing I will say you get the proper case is this is all digipacks, which I'll come on to in a minute. But I think without any further ado, let's open the box set up. So it comes in quite a nice set, as you can see, that opens up. And first off in this, we have a booklet. And I thought, great, we're going to get a load of write-up about the albums. And I was left a little bit disappointed with the booklet itself. There's a small write-up on from Greg Prato about just a general sort of synopsis of Priest's career. So, going all the way from the start with Gull, with Rocka Rolla, Sad Wings, and then really just going through all of the business to the current day. From 1974, continuing to the present day, Judas Priest rules the metal landscape supremely. The complete albums collection is the heavy-duty proof. And then after that, you kind of just get a couple of pictures, granted, and then a track list for all the albums, which I don't mind in fairness, but I think when you see quite a bulky box set, quite a bulky booklet, not a bulky box set, quite a bulky booklet, you think, oh, there could be a bit of a write-up in here, which could be great, but a little bit disappointing, but not terrible. And then we get the 17 albums housed in this set. You can see all in chronological order and quite neatly laid out, I have to say. But they are all digipacks, which unfortunately does lead to a little bit of damage. Now, as I alluded to earlier, I bought this second-hand off eBay, so I can't remember whether it was myself who caused this damage while it was in my possession or not. But you can just see on the top half of that there, there's a little bit of a cut, I guess. A little bit where the papers come off the paper sleeve. So that's a little bit of a shame. I don't know if that's happened with any of the other albums, but I did notice that when I got the box set out, this album for Rocka Rolla. So you've got the traditional kind of vinyl covers with the front and back. But that's all you get. You get this and the CD, which are all in this kind of design. So you've got the internal artwork in the middle. Just try and get that out of some sort of shadow, which I don't think is going to happen. And then the silver, don't know what you call them, get back balls, I guess. Silver balls on the outside. So it all starts with Rocka Rolla, and while I'm presenting these, I'm going to talk about a little bit about each album in turn. I have done previously a British Steel album review. If you guys would like to see more Priest album reviews, let me know down below. So, Rocka Rolla, and I've only really listened to this album in relation to the box set, not outside of the box set. And that's what the great thing is about this box set. It's opened myself up to the 80s edition of Priest, and we'll come on to that in a bit. But also made me revisit some of the 70s albums as well. So, Rocka Rolla, it's a decent start, but have I gone back to it since? No, I haven't. I might go back to it again, but it doesn't catch me as much. Then we have my old man's favourite Priest album, very slight cut in the paper at the top. Maybe they're just prone to that at the top, but it's a bit of a shame. But again, I don't think I'm ever going to sell this, so it's not really much of a problem. So we've got Sad Wings of Destiny, which, funnily enough, a bit of an interesting quirk here is that the track list actually appears on the album as it is on the back. Now, I'm sure that was the design back in the day. I can't quite remember without getting the vinyl copy out. But on the cover, you've got side 2's tracks listed before side 1's. And I'm not sure why. And obviously the guys putting this together didn't realise. So the sides are flipped, which when listening to it on a CD is very annoying. In terms of importing it into iTunes and listening it onto your iPod, obviously it's no problem. But it's really annoying when you're listening to the CD. But, oh well. But Sad Wings of Destiny as an album, as I said before, I'd been exposed before listening this to Victim of Changes and The Ripper. 2 excellent tracks. I really like Dreamer, Deceiver and Deceiver on side 1. I'm not a big fan of side 2 though. I don't know why, it just doesn't do it so much for me. And I think really where Judas Priest start to shine are these next 4 albums. Really, really good, and probably in any order on any given day my favourite Judas Priest albums. So that starts in 77 with Sin After Sin, the first album off the Gull label, going on to CBS at this point. Brilliant artwork. Love the artwork for this album. Just to note as well, the albums from Sin After Sin all the way to Painkiller come with a couple of bonus tracks, which personally I don't care for because I'm very... What would the word be? I don't know what the word would be. I'm almost too organised with my collection that if it's not on the album, I don't want to know about it. And what was confusing with this is, for example, one of the bonus tracks on the Sin After Sin album is Jawbreaker live, and Jawbreaker was from the Defenders of the Faith album, so it's completely out in terms of what bonus tracks are in, which I find a little bit weird, personally. But again, a little bit annoying when you're listening to it as a CD. I'd rather just have distant, aggressive finish and that be it. A little bit of an annoyance, but I guess you're paying the money. You might as well take the additional content. It's not something I've particularly consumed. I'm really just looking for the albums themselves. But Sin After Sin, brilliant album. One of my favourite Judas Priest albums, in particular the title track. I mean, I say in particular... It's brilliant, this album. Diamonds and Rust, Starbreaker, Last Rose of Summer. I love Last Rose of Summer. It's so different for Priest and such a welcome break from the heavy metal tunes that you hear before this, but a great ballad to close off side 1. Let Us Pray and Call for the Priest. Excellent. Raw Deal, great. Here Come the Tears, great. This is the Digressor, probably my least favourite track on the album. I just think it's a bit, dare I say it, a little bit tacky. Almost. I don't mean that in a nasty way. I don't know how I really mean it, but it just doesn't do it as much for me as the other tracks, but still a really good track. So then, after Sin, we get Stay in Class. And I have to say, these covers are obviously prone to this bit of paper split at the top, which is a real shame. Again, brilliant artwork for Stay in Class. And credit for this, they've actually put Better By You, Better Than Me on the bonus live tracks, which was a track on this album. This album is my favourite Judas Priest album. I think what I said earlier was a little bit out of turn. I don't think that on many days anything would overtake this sublime album. I don't think there's any break in this album where it drops down. I think it's just a 5-star album. Really, really excellent. Killer Machine continued the trend. Also recorded in 78. We've then got, interestingly, Fight for Your Life as a bonus track, which would appear later re-recorded on Defenders of the Faith as Rock Hard Ride Free, and then Riding on the Wind Live, which was from Screaming for Vengeance. So again, a little bit of a disconnect. This a little bit of a drop in quality, I think, from Stained Class, but still excellent. A couple of weak tracks. I think I'm Not an Evil Fantasies fan or Burning Up, but apart from that, Take on the World irked a few, I think, because it's quite a commercial track, a little bit like United on the British Steel album, but still a very good album. Then we go to the Live in Japan Unleashed in the East album, which, this is a bonus for including the bonus tracks. We've got 4 bonus tracks that weren't on the original vinyl issue. So you've got Rock Forever, Delivering the Goods, Hellbent for Leather, and Starbreaker, which weren't on the original vinyl edition, and Starbreaker in particular is excellent. Really excellent live. Then we come to the end of the classic Judas Priest era, I think, unfortunately. That's my opinion. British Steel. Again, a couple of bonus tracks here, Red, White and Blue, and then Grinder Live, which at least was on the Judas Priest British Steel album. Red, White and Blue, written during the earlier years of our career and recorded in 1985. Again, it just seems a bit out of kilter, some of these bonus tracks. But I think a lot of these tracks were later recorded, so you're not going to put them all on one album and not include anything on the others, but it seems a little bit disjointed. Again, British Steel, top album. I just think there's a little bit of a drop in quality, which might just well be because of the change in sound at the time. Ultimately, from Stained Class anyway, and that's an incredibly high bar to set. Rapid Fire, Metal Gods, great start. Breaking the Law, one of those that we don't really need to hear again. But there's not a bad track in here, I have to say. But consistent, but not fantastic like Stained Class, but ultimately pretty good at the same time. Point of Entry. This is a much maligned album, I think, but one in previous years that people have come to enjoy a bit more. I like Heading Out to the Highway, and I've got a bit of a soft spot for Hot Rockin', but apart from that, not that bothered. And a lot of people, I know, especially in the American market, Judas Priest were massive in the 80s. But for me, after the 70s, there's a drop-off, and that, probably an unpopular opinion, I'm not bothered about this album. It really doesn't do much for me. I love the Helion and Electric Eye to start off the album, but I'm not too into the tracks until You've Got Another Thing Coming. I love that track, but apart from that, again, it's not a great album for me. I prefer the album that comes after that, which is Defenders of the Faith, released 2 years later in 1984. So we've got the really heavy Free Will Burning that starts this album. And I always find and this is where I struggle with some of the later bands. I've kind of got imagine the volume on any device, really. We get to a certain volume in terms of metal that I can take, and then you get just after that, and it's too much. Free Will Burning is just about on the limit for my tastes, but it's really good. Side 1 though, Jawbreaker, Rock Hard Ride Free, The Sentinel and Love Bites, brilliant. And then unfortunately I think side 2 does slip a little bit. Some heads are going to roll. It's, yeah, not great. Not great at all. But again, another good album, and I think a better album than Screaming for Vengeance. We then come to my most unpopular Judas Priest opinion. I bloody love this. I really do. I really, really do. Again, not a bad album on here. It's different. It's a little bit, dare I say it, like Kisses Unmasked back in the day, which I'm also a fan of. Probably not as much as this, but this is different, obviously, because it's got all the electronic synthesizers, and it doesn't sound metal as such, especially when you compare it to something like Stained Class back in the day for Priest. Turbo Lover is a killer track. One of my favourite Judas Priest tracks. It's an anthem, and I think it was one that people detested back in the day, but I know they still play it a lot live now. Locked In, great. Private Property, Parental Guidance, quite teen boppy tracks, if I dare to say that, but catchy as hell. Rock You All Around the World, not as interested because it's more of a very much an anthemic track, so wears a little bit thin. Out in the Cold, really long sort of ballad, power ballad. I love power ballads, so that's a plus for me. Wild Nights, Hot and Crazy Days, again another sort of anthem. Not as much into that one. Hot for Love is a really aggressive track. I love that one. And then Reckless is a good track to close this out with. So I love this album, I really do. Again, not love in terms of 5-star stained class Killing Machine level, but still really good. We've then got the double live album from the 80s era, which I think is helped by my love of Turbo Lover, because from this track, album opens with a track from Turbo, which is Out in the Cold. From that album, we've got Out in the Cold, Private Property, Turbo Lover, Parental Guidance. So 4 tracks from that album. There's only one track on this from, well, the original. I'll come on to the bonus tracks in a minute. From Screaming for Vengeance, You've Got Another Thing Coming, Electric Eye, and that's it. A couple of tracks from Defenders and a couple of tracks from, just the one actually, from Point of Entry, and then a couple of the classic tracks of Breaking the Law, Living After Midnight being the anthems, and then the 3 bonus tracks, Screaming for Vengeance, the title track from that album, Rock Hard, Ride Free, and Hellbent for Leather. I prefer this actually to Unleashed in the East. Unleashed in the East has got quite a raw sound, which I think was inevitable in the 70s, but I do love this one, I have to say. This one does have a nice little gatefold sleeve. I think it's the only one, I could be wrong, I think it's the only one in this box set to have that sleeve, so that's quite nice. But yeah, I love this live album, a really good live album. We then come to a little bit of a drop-off, let's just say, in Ram It Down from 1980, but again, just imagine, I mean, in terms of size, this is great. I'd have probably liked the proper CD cases, but just imagine if these were bloody vinyl. I mean, you'd be paying £20, £30 a pop, and no doubt this probably would have been more expensive, I guess, when it was new. So we've got Ram It Down, which I don't think's a bad album, but yeah, it's not their best. Side 1, again, actually, I really like. Ram It Down, heavy metal, love sound, Come and Get It, and Hard as Iron I like in particular, but we're not going to discuss Johnny Be Good. Painkiller, some people's favourite Judas Priest album. I think probably for people who have got slightly heavier preferences than me. I like the title track and I love A Touch of Evil, one of my favourite Priest tracks, but apart from that, a little bit too heavy for me, personally. We then skip the 2 albums with Ripper, we don't talk about those, and we go to the return, the grand return of Rob Halford with Angel of Retribution. And I only listened to this once, in fairness, so I can't comment too much, but I do really like Judas Rising and Deal with the Devil. I remember this being well worth a listen until we got to the really long extended Loch Ness, which was painful. But yeah, this is a good album. Nostradamus, I'll be honest, I haven't got through this yet. I've tried a couple of times and got bored with it. This album, again, has got quite a bad reputation, not like Thin Lizzy. But again, this maybe not the right group to do a concept album. Sorry, this one has got the gatefold sleeve as well. Maybe not the right group to do a concept album, but I don't know. But I'm not too up with this album, and probably not what I'm going to go back to all that quickly, to be honest. And then we end the box set with A Touch of Evil Live, which, to be quite honest, I had no idea they even did. This, I think, well, would have definitely been late 2000s they did this. And this has got a lot of tracks from the Angel of Retribution album, so I guess it might have been from that tour. Is Hellrider on? Yes, it is, on Angel of Retribution. So the first 3 tracks, Judas Rising, Hellrider, and Between the Hammer and the Anvil from Angel. Riding on the Wind from Screaming for Vengeance, Death from Angel. And then Beyond the Realms of Death, Dissident Aggression, A Touch of Evil. There's always a comment that I can relate to. I don't think Judas Priest are the best band live. I'll be honest there. But those 3 tracks, particularly Beyond the Realms of Death, was just designed to be played live. It's Judas Priest's best track, to be honest. I've got to say that. And live, it's just absolutely tremendous, particularly that final guitar solo where they just let rip. Awesome. Dissident Aggressor. Now, I said that this wasn't my favourite track from Sin After Sin, but here, excellent, absolutely fantastic, and just aggressive, really aggressive. I know that's part of the track, but it just feels really aggressive. A touch of evil is excellent here too. So that's the end of the box set. 17 albums, and when you think about how inexpensive the box set is, or was for me, just over £50. So you're looking at just over £3 an album. It's excellent value. It really is, and I think it's by far the cheapest way I could have gone about buying the Judas Priest collection on CD. In terms of what's about at the moment, when I looked this morning on Discogs and eBay, I think this has got about a Discogs average of about £50, but there's a lot of copies on Discogs listed for £100, £120, which, again, I think you can get it on eBay cheaper than that. It is rare to come about, I think, recently. I've looked in the last 4 months, so I think I definitely got it for a good price. But there is one on Discogs at the moment for £25 only, with £11 shipping, £36, which is an absolute bargain, that is. But I think if you can get this, well, there's 17 albums, so I think if you can get it for, I know I've just said that 100 odd is quite a bad price. I think if you can get this for anything less than £85, it's worth having, because it's less than £5 an album, and I think that's more than justified for this excellent box set. A bit of critique about the design of the box set and how fragile it is. You can see there's even a little bit of wear on the end there, which is a little bit of a shame. But this will go back on the top of my CD storage unit back there, once it's done with. But I love Priest. I really do love Priest. And yeah, real great stuff. I paid just over £50. Absolute bargain for this. There are more box sets to come. I've bought a couple of more box sets recently in the last 12 months I want to review and talk a little bit about. And if you want to see more of this, let me know down in the comments, and more Judas Priest content as well. Any comments about Priest the band, obviously, would be well appreciated, and any discussion would just be absolutely fantastic in general. General. If you've enjoyed this, leave a like down below, comment your thoughts, and make sure to subscribe for regular music discussion videos. Also looking to do a little bit of film discussion, just anything that comes to me really. I have changed the name of the channel, if this is not your first video here, from TIJ Music to Toby Jones, to allow myself to do anything that I want. So even though before I would have said it's Toby from TIJ Music, it's now just me, Toby Jones. And with that, thank you very much for tuning in to today's video. I really appreciate your support if you've got to this point. Again, remember to leave a like, that really helps in the algorithm. Any engagement helps get this more views, and ultimately, I'll be honest, gives me a bit more encouragement to do it myself. But with that parting comment, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye for now.